is keeping us from looking at this. So Tammy Wilson is the artisan designer with Stampin' Up that gave me this fabulous idea, and I am going to show you how I did it. Like I said, I'm going to do a little bit different color. The DSP that I used is retired, but like I said, we've got DSP on sale right now, and there are some fabulous ones that would work great for this. What I would suggest you keep in mind is use a DSP that has some white in the background and isn't too terribly busy. I am just going to cut this down with my Stampin' Trimmer. I want this size to be quite a bit smaller than our card base, as you can see. So we are going to go 3 3/4 by 5 for our DSP. Again, that was 3 3/4 by 5. That gives you a nice white frame around your design. And I am going to do this slightly different. I'm going to work on a white card base panel. It is almost the same size as the card base. I trimmed off 1/8 of an inch on both the length and the width, and I'm going to work on this panel, and when I am done, I am going to glue the whole thing to the card front like that. So I'm going to set my card base aside for now, and we're going to focus on the card front. This extra DSP will work fabulous for covering the flap on your envelope later if you are into decorating your envelopes, which I definitely recommend. It adds a real upgraded look to the whole card sending. So we're going to set these 2 panels aside for the moment as well. And I am going to get out some Crumb Cake cardstock. Now I've got just a little scrap here that I am going to heat emboss this flower on from the stamp set. So way I did that, if you're not familiar with heat embossing, you are going to go over your cardstock with an embossing buddy, or anti-static powder is the generic term for it. And that keeps the extra heat embossing powder from sticking in places you don't necessarily want it to be. Now I'm going to use this fabulous Versamark ink to stamp up the image that I want. I'm going to make sure it's liberally stamped because my pad is just a little on the dry side. I've used it a lot lately. And as you can tell, this is just a scrap of cardstock here that I'm stamping on. So I want to work around that little notch that's cut out of it. And I'm just going to firmly stamp, and I'm going to hold it there for just a minute to let that ink transfer onto the cardstock well. And pull it up. Now you'll see that the image is there. It's just a little darker. That's what Versamark does, and that is a fabulous way to use Versamark just for a subtle background. It works great. So now I am going to use my heat embossing powder though. So I'm going to sprinkle the heat embossing powder. I'm using white today, and I'm just going to put it right over top of that image, and I'm going to tap off any excess. Now you'll see that I've got some extra powder that's clinging to this. Sometimes a good flick on the back will knock that off, but this is being a little stubborn. I put lotion on my hands this morning, so they've got a little bit more oil than I would like. It's always a great idea to go ahead and make sure that your hands are good and clean before you start. Apparently, I did not. So what I'm going to grab is just a little paintbrush, just a fine little paintbrush. Any little brush will do. And I'm just going to go ahead and knock that extra powder off of there. Now we're going to die cut this, so it's not crucial that I get every nook and cranny, but I just want to clean it up a little bit. So that we've got it nice and pretty. Now I am going to use my heat tool to go ahead and heat that embossing powder real well. You'll watch the magic happen here. As it heats up, it is going to begin to melt that powder. Yes, there we go. There's the magic. You'll see it begin to melt, and you just want to make sure you hit all of the areas where there is powder. Nothing should be grainy. It should all be melted. Otherwise, it's going to brush right off of your paper when you go trying to die cut it or color it. So do be sure you get all of the areas. Okay. We've got our heat embossing. Go ahead, and we've got the new Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. We've got our base layer. We've got the number 2, which is a shim. We've got a number 3 plate. We're going to put our image down. And because this is so fine on the stem, I normally don't use washi tape to hold my stuff in place, but because that stem is just so fine, if it moves just a little, you're going to cut your stem off. So I'm looking to make sure that I have the white image. I can see it through here where the stem is at. Go ahead and tape that down, making sure this little bud at the top is also covered. So there we go. Going to go ahead and put the second number 3 plate on top, and I'm going to go ahead and run that through the machine. Pop this loose, and there we have our beautiful stamped, heat embossed, and die cut image ready on the card. I think today I'm going to try using the hammered metal embossing folder, which gives this look. And it's actually, you've got 2 sides of each to choose from with any of your embossing folders. So I can do it like this, or I can choose to do it like this. This is the hammered metal look, but I almost like it debossed better. And so I think I'm going to be using this side of the hammered metal. I'm going to lay that aside for the moment. And we have one more element that I did cut out with the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. For it, you will just need a plain white piece of cardstock. And again, we will be using, so you'll need a plain white piece of cardstock, and this layer cuts this out. So we did that. You will need another piece of white to die cut this out. And I used a piece of vellum cardstock with the largest die. So this one. However, it was bigger than I wanted because it is almost as big as the whole card base. So what I did, let me bring that back in, and let's look at using the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine to cut both of your number 3 plates. And if your plates are as beat up as mine are, you're going to want a plain piece of white scratch paper. So What I will do is line this up and send it through my machine, just as is. Here, my number 3 plate and my piece of vellum are coming back in here, and I'm going to cut off about 2 sections of, like two of these little pieces here are going to come off. So I want to line this up on the third one over. So I've got the corner, I've got one, and I'm going to put the corner on number 3. And I'm going to go ahead and washi tape this in place again. I've got a piece of washi tape that I used previously. With the holes that are already cut, you should still get a nice, clean, squared off piece. But if you're concerned, you can always tape it top and bottom. Put just a little piece down here to line the bottom ones up as well. This is going to be a layer that's underneath, so it's okay if it's a little bit wonky because it's just a design element. Now, Tammy did not use this layer. She used a square vellum doily, which are pre-cut doilies you can order. And that's always an option. I did not have those handy, so that was not an option for me. But I'll be honest, I love finding my own way through and finding ways to make mine unique. And we are going to start working on some of our elements. So we've got our beautiful die cut piece for the flower. And I want to go ahead and color that. Now I'm using the Granny Apple Green gingham background paper that, like I said, it is retired. And I'm going to make my flowers yellow. So I turned out, and that's what I'm going to use again. Now I'm going to put some scratch paper under my project because these will soak through. Now, I did some playing yesterday to see how the colors were going to look when I used them on the Crumb Cake cardstock. And I really did like the way the yellow dried. The light yellow does not show very much, but I'm going to go ahead and put a layer of the light yellow down anyway because I want to have a little contrast to my flowers. So we'll put the light down first. I am using Daffodil Delight, light and dark. And I'll probably add some hints of Granny Apple Green to the stems when I'm done here, just to tie it in with that gingham paper. I'm going to let that dry for just a second. I'm going to go ahead and add that Granny Apple Green just to these leaves. I'm using the light Granny Apple Green right now. I'm going to see how that dries because I did not play with the green yesterday. And I just added a little highlights over some of that white. Some of these areas that look like they could be leaves, I just added a little color to right there at the bases of those flowers, just light. Hit those leaves one more time. We don't want to completely cover our Crumb Cake cardstock. Okay, the yellow's had a minute to dry. I'm going to go back with the dark and add some dark towards the base of these flowers. So what I'm doing is the part of the flower that would be closest to you, I am adding the darker shading to. and I am leaving what would be the opposite side of the flower, the lighter color. And the bud, I'm just going to go ahead and hit all of it with the dark. And you'll see I wasn't real careful. I went over our white embossing powder, and that's fine. That is, if you use ink, it's going to wipe away. The Stampin' Blends do not so much. So if you want it to be crisp and white, I would suggest you do the aqua painters in ink and make it clean, and you can always reheat it afterwards to clean it up. I like the yellow in there. I think it adds something. And in fact, with the blue, I went back over and made sure I hit, and I think I'm going to do that here again. I want that yellow to stand out because it's on Crumb Cake. The yellow is very different looking than you would get. So I'm going to go ahead and hit some of those areas with the yellow. I'll leave some of the white show for this portion. So what I did with this is I cut this out of the white and layered some cardstock that I ran through the embossing folder. So we're going to adhere that now. Again, you can use either side, the embossed or the debossed. I want the debossed to show. For me, when I looked at Tammy's, I thought corkboard. It looks like a corkboard, and I like totally like a corkboard. No, but it gives it some nice texture. Okay. Now, on top of that, we will be layering our flower kind of across and off the edge. And I tied ribbon around that. Now, when I was working with the blue, I had the fabulous ribbon combo pack that Stampin' Up offers. That is going to be, all of their ribbons can be found in the catalog, starting on page 139. The Flowers for Every Season ribbon combo pack on page 140. I used on my first card, I used a combination of both of these. These two come in a pack with this one. The Just Jade doesn't really coordinate with either of the cards I'm making, so I focused on these two for my first card, which was the blue. I don't have any blue in the second card, so I'm not going to use that. I am going to go ahead and use just this and some of the linen twine. So what you want is enough of this ribbon to wrap all the way around and be able to tie a nice knot. So I just kind of eyeball it. Give myself a little bit extra for trimming purposes. And I'm going to go ahead and mimic that with my twine. So I'm going to do that again with this one, making sure that the ribbon's not twisted on the back. You can fuss with it and make it how you want it to look, but I'm pretty happy with that. We're going to go ahead and we're going to adhere this. And this is going to slip under, but I want that leaf to kind of pop up over the top edge. At least that's the way I did it in the first one. And I'm going to try to replicate that as best I can here. So I did not get real fancy. You could pop this up with dimensionals. I did not. I'm going to hold it in place, and I'm going to put just a little glue. Much better. Got it more to the size I wanted. And we're just going to kind of lay it off center. Nothing's going to be squared up. Okay. What I'm trying to achieve is getting some of that lacy look around the edges a little bit. Now, because glue shows through vellum, we just want to get it right in the center of our vellum piece where we can cover over it and hide it pretty well. So I'm just going to pop this on here, give it a good firm rub right there in the center, and now I'm going to go ahead and put some adhesive on this white panel that we've attached our flower to. Like I said, we don't want this squared up too much. We want it to be a little off center. We're seeing our pretty little lacy vellum around the edges. And now we're going to pop on our little sentiment tag. Now I went ahead and pre-stamped the So Very Happy For You on that little label punch from the Tasteful Label dies that I showed you previously. On my first card, I stamped it in blue, and it was pretty on that card. I want it to be a little bit more bold on this card. So instead of doing green or yellow, I went ahead and used black ink. The black Tuxedo Black Memento ink. I think I'm going to add just a little more of this twine up here at the top, and the pearls very beautifully. I am going to pop this linen bow on with a glue dot. These work wonderfully. Just take the glue dot and kind of roll it into a ball, either with your finger or a tool, and put that right. Actually, I think I'm going to use this as the back of my bow. Just put it right where you want it to be. They are super sticky, so they are going to try to stick to your tool as well as your bow. You just have to go ahead and get it tugged off. Place your bow. I guess I better adhere that before. Getting ahead of myself. So I'm going to glue my tag down first. And again, I don't want it necessarily straight, so I'm just going to get it off center a bit. I want it tucked under that flower slightly. And I'm just going to put this up near the corner of that tag. Okay. And nope, those are the rounds. Get these beautiful pearls. I love these pearls. They're so versatile. They come in several different sizes, which are awesome. So I think I'm going to add a small one beside it. And then we'll put a medium one down here. And I think I'm going to go all out. I like to do odd numbers. So we'll scatter 3 down here. And what I'm going to do now is put this whole panel. This could go directly on the card base. I am working with a thinner cardstock today, so I like a nice heavy card. So I'm going to glue this to a white panel and then layer that white panel onto my card base. Another advantage of doing this is if you wanted to stamp the inside of your card base and you messed up, you can easily just cover over your mess up and fold it the opposite direction and then put your card front on. Not going to bother with that today, but that is a good tip and hint for you if you have issues stamping sentiments straight on the inside. And there we have today's card. I hope this has been helpful and informative and given you some great ideas. Again, thanks to Tammy Wilson for her idea on this card. Let's find our original card and we'll bring it in. So here is the blue. Here is the Granny Apple Green. So balmy blue option, Granny Apple Green option. If you're curious what colors I used on the flowers for this one, I did use Night of Navy for that one, rather than the balmy blue, which just was a little too pale for this card. So there we have it. If you are liking this bundle and you're considering buying it but haven't committed yet, or maybe you've already committed and you have this bundle, would like some more inspiration on how to use it, I plan to do some other YouTube videos with this bundle, so I hope that you'll tune in and look for those upcoming videos soon.